Origin Energy also had its results out today, a 10% rise in underlying profits to $585 million. But the company missed its own and analyst expectations, largely due to higher exploration costs. There was also disappointment over the Gladstone LNG project. A decision on the next stage of development has been delayed due to lack of long-term customers. But the company's CEO, Grant King, is upbeat. I spoke to him earlier today. Grant King, welcome to Lateline Business.
Thank you, Bridget.
Look, you may be pleased, but the market hasn't reacted favourably. I suppose you can't make everybody happy, it seems.
Look, we're pleased with the performance of the business. Clearly others will judge, but it often takes a day or two for people to take on board all the information we've provided to the market. I haven't looked at what the market's done generally today, but I imagine it's down a bit.
Looking firstly at the AP LNG project at Gladstone, where are you up to with securing customers?
Yeah, we've made quite clear through the course of the day that in relation to consents that has been in a position to proceed with the project, we expect to have all our consents by the end of the year. And we've reinforced that in our discussions with customers, we're engaged with customers that we believe represent sufficient volume to trigger the project. But, of course, we've not made any definitive announcements about contracts with those customers at this stage.
But so you are confident that by the end of the year you will definitely have customers in place for the Gladstone project?
Well, what we've said, and I think it's important just to be very clear on this difference, we'll be in place to approve the project from the point of view of all of the other necessary approvals we have. But contracts with customers remain a key condition for proceeding to FID, actually taking that final investment decision.
Look, we just mentioned the election. Each day it's looking like there could be possibly a carbon tax or ETS could be put back on the table. Are you preparing yourself for this added cost, and how?
Look, we've believed and articulated for quite some time that we think the most effective way to manage carbon and reduce carbon emissions in the economy is through putting a price on carbon and in so doing through an ETS, not a tax. So we've had a favoured view as to how it ought to be done, and we've been preparing the business for a long time because we think that is the direction of things. And I think it's important to note that notwithstanding there's debate about whether it's taxes or ETSs or other interventions, both sides or both the main sides of politics articulate a common desire to reduce carbon emissions by 5% on 2000 levels by 2020, and our business is very well prepared to face that challenge.
If it's greater, though, than 5%, if the cuts are bigger?
The way our business is set up, which is primarily focused around gas-based generation with a lot of renewable generation opportunities, any greater target would be only beneficial to our business.
Now, you've outlined that you're interested in New South Wales energy assets from privatisation. New South Wales has an election in March. How confident are you of securing these assets?
Well, there's a couple of elements in answering that question. The process is running. The process appears to be a good process, and it's effective at this point in time. We have observed, though, that it's a large transaction to run from the government's perspective, and it will, of course, in theory, come to a conclusion around the end of the political cycle, and it's very difficult for us to speculate whether that concurrence of events will make the process difficult to complete inside the time frame for the next election in New South Wales. But as we sit here today, we are participating in that process, and we're hopeful that it runs to conclusion.
How worried are you about political uncertainty? You've got two key areas, in a sense, that you've outlined for growth. One in, obviously, New South Wales, looking at the privatisation of assets. You've also got Gladstone and securing those customers there, and uncertainty on the federal front. There's a number of different things at play.
Yeah, I think that uncertainty is best thought of in two dimensions. Firstly, in the very short term, we're faced with a high degree of uncertainty. We don't even know the makeup of the next government federally. But at the end of the day, that will sort itself out and we'll have a government. The uncertainty that's most troublesome, I think, for business is the policy uncertainty, in our case, for example, around carbon emissions, and in the case of New South Wales, the process of bringing New South Wales retail assets to market has been a long and challenging process. But the uncertainty that worries us most is that longer-term policy uncertainty. And clearly the decisions we make in our industry about long-term investments with long lives, things that take a long time to build and operate for 20 or 30 or 40 years.
And longer term, whichever government gets in, what would you like to see in regards to energy policy?
Well, the centre of energy policy these days is the question of carbon, reducing carbon emissions. And if anything, we've probably, frankly, gone backwards in a policy sense in that we've moved away from an ETS and away from a price on carbon. And we continue to articulate that that is the most effective way to bring about substantial reductions in carbon emissions in our economy. Now, that's fairly much at the centre of energy policy. Australia is itself blessed with lots of choices around fuels. We've clearly got a lot of gas, a lot of coal, a lot of uranium, should that be the case, and clearly substantial renewable resources. So it's not such a challenging policy environment as to what fuels do we have access to. We have plenty of fuels. But what choices do policymakers want us to make is the critical issue, and that's very much informed by carbon policy.
If those cuts are higher than 5%, if that is put back on the table, are you then still in the position to pursue those renewable energy opportunities?
If government set for us a task greater than the 5% by 2020, and I should say that that task of 5% by 2020 is a challenging task in its own right. It doesn't sound a lot, but it is a challenging task.
And what happens if it was 10% or even higher? That's now a possibility.
It would be an even greater challenge. And our view is that the 5% is achievable through the current generation fleet and through the additions that will be made to that fleet if we act from now on, 2010 going forward. But if that task was doubled, then our policymakers would have to grapple, I think almost certainly, with how do they retire more carbon-intensive generation assets from our generation fleet, in Australia, not just our companies, of course, all of the generation in Australia. And that would be a much more complex question as to how do you bring about early retirement of more carbon-intensive generating assets in Australia.
Grant King, we'll leave it there, but thanks very much for talking to Late Line Business.
Thanks very much.